All right, real quick, stocks by the numbers, welcome back. And I just wanted to do a quick update as per request. I know people are asking about Rolls Royce. We have earnings coming up soon, so let's get into it. Rolls Royce Holdings, again, here in the States, listed on the OTC under symbol RYCEY for us. And we can see that the stock recently hit new highs yet again of $8.29, pulled back a little bit today, $7.94 on the close, down about a quarter, roughly 3.25%. Of course, originally brought to you on this channel back here at like $1.20 in 2023, and now the stock is up to $8, slowly hitting all of those levels as we laid out in the 4s, in the 5s, in the 7s, and of course now we're into the 8s. So, in my opinion, we could potentially have a run up here to around like 895. And if we back up here, you can see, well, here actually, there you go, easier on the old chart. You can see how we topped out around this level here before we had a slight rejection, right? Top left of the screen, the O, the H, the L, the C. That's the open, the high, the low, the close. You can see the high, 895, right? 891. Look, we come back up here. That actually bounced up and down, up to 912, as low as about 850. Back up. Look at the open, 894. Look at the high, 898. The close, 892. Right? It's all over the place. Here's the high at 901. Open, 886, 905. High at 909, 907. So 9 might be the psychological level. Look at the close right there on this candle before we had the pop and then the 3 reds. You can see. Look at the close right at 895. The pullbacks here. Look at this low 889, 903. This actually flashed down, but it opened at 912. You can see the drop down there to 865, but then it pumped back up. So in my opinion, that's probably low 883, 887, close at 901. Right? Look at this. Open at 890 before we really started to beat it up. So, in my opinion, that's around where it's going to go. Like 890. Maybe you can see that $9 level. But chances are, I mean, they could run it up going into earnings. As you see, this company, again, reports semi-annually, which is every 6 months, not every 3 months. But the earnings have just been phenomenal. The stock obviously storming back. They announced they're going to reinstate the dividend to shareholders, which of course is something to look forward to. Earnings coming out roughly about 1 week from today, next Thursday on the 27th. Analysts expecting 12 cents a share on revenue estimates of 10.97 billion. And again, the company bringing in like 22 billion for the year, only trading about 3x that right now. Market cap 68 billion. PE now obviously more realistic. It's sitting here at about 23.5, but still could be viewed as undervalued. And I still say, believe it or not, a lot of these defense stocks might still stay up and keep climbing. But we know Rolls Royce does a bunch of stuff. But I heard, I think it was today, there was a potential attack in Israel, maybe. I don't know. I honestly didn't look into it. I just heard about it in passing. But we know that things may get worse before they get better, so to speak. But again, overall, the whole situation here was the fact that so many people were counting them down and out. We spoke about how it could be undervalued still. And we basically speculated that, the company wasn't going anywhere. The contracts, the orders were going to keep coming in. And that's exactly what they did. And obviously they made themselves more efficient. They started beating again on the EPS side. Revenue here coming in 8 billion, above 7 billion estimates. And then we saw the chunk up to the 10s. And now you can see almost 11 now. So, I mean, based off recent trends, of course we know earnings are a toss-up. But based off recent trends, I would probably give the company the benefit of the doubt and say that they would probably beat earnings. If they do, again, we could run up potentially to 890 over the next week going into these earnings. And if they do happen to post, a decent semi-annual report, we could potentially even spike straight up here and get to this $10 psychological level. If you can see on the alt chart, you can see the bottom fib level here is about $11. So this is about a key level, as again we looked at back here, between like 885 and like 905. It looked like, right? It has to get above that point. And if we can slowly inch up, and then of course we have an earnings beat or at least a meet with no potential extra negative catalyst coming out of left field, then in my opinion, yeah, I do think it could break up and it can get to 10 and potentially $11. I do believe that. I do believe that. Let's check stock charts real quick. We can see we ran up to new highs and the RSI was overextended, just about 80, and then we started to pull back here. You can see slight dip, though it's really not a big drop, and the RSI sitting here at about 63. So we could potentially see a pullback, maybe to the mid Bollinger Band, 758, but I don't know if it'll even drop that much after just gapping up and hitting new highs. So maybe 780, or right here maybe with this gap fill, maybe like 770, and then it'll bounce probably, in my opinion. But again, it's the long-term growth in my eyes is still there, so that's why I really wouldn't look at this from a trading perspective, but to each their own. And we can see the RSI again now up here at that 70 benchmark, but as we see, that really hasn't seemed to matter over the last several years on this massive rebound recovery. Look at the tightening of those Bollinger Bands, almost kind of showing you that, as we said, when we see the tightening of the Bollinger Bands, you usually see a pop or a drop, and you can see that the stock wanted to pop up and out and continue to hit new highs. So that's why, in my opinion, it might just beeline and just retrace right back to $9, $10 a share. And hopefully the company, as I said, comes out with a decent report and doesn't, throw a wrench into these gears and slow down this momentum. As we see, worst case scenario here, maybe looking at the weekly, you see the bottom Bollinger Band at about 6 3/4, and you have your 50-day moving average here, probably slowly inching its way up to about 6.5, right? It's at 641 right now. It did go on a pretty big run, as you see. So if we do happen to disappoint, or they guide that the next 6 months might be light or rough or unpredictable, then maybe you can see a pullback to the high sixes, potentially the mid sixes, which in my eyes, I would jump on it, but that's just me. Pulling it back here to this moving average of 3 would be a joke, unless the company really comes out with something negative, and for any reason, if that happens, I would jump on it as well. But, we could potentially see a cooling even if we have an earnings beat, which might throw some people for a loop. But as we said, sometimes they sideways, they consolidate, they channel downward even when the numbers are healthy. And then when everyone forgets about it, no one's looking, that's when it pops up and takes that next leg higher. So again, we will probably come back to Rolls Royce in about a week when they do report earnings. And, we'll see how it looks and we'll see where we can go from here. But, union members at Rolls Royce to authorize strike. India Engineering rises on deal with Rolls Royce. I spoke a while back also predicting that, in my opinion, we were going to see a lot more business, a lot more deals coming out of India with a lot of Indian companies. And it looks like that's slowly taking place. I'm predicting in my eyes that India is going to be viewed as, quote unquote, the new China, with, again, over 1 billion people there, almost, for the most part, basically an untapped consumer base, if you really think about it. And not necessarily a pain in our side, if you will, as China could be viewed as, kind of. But, all right. Company signs memorandum of understanding with, okay. No financial details have been shared. Still good, though. Again, as we said, we're continuously seeing these deals, these contracts signed, just continuously flowing in over roughly the last 2 straight years that we've been watching Rolls Royce and talking about the rebound story. Aerospace, produce civil aircraft engine parts in India. Company says order valued not determinable. Okay, very nice. UK pledges to open up new sites for mini nuclear power stations. Yes, we spoke about the small nuclear reactors, apparently, that Rolls Royce was working on. Britain promised more free sites for nuclear energy developments across England and Wales. Private investment into SMRs, small modular reactors. Push to decarbonize the power network. Expand the list of possible sites for nuclear development. Okay, very nice. Quote, this country hasn't built a nuclear power station in decades. We've been let down and left behind. Okay. You're seeing this resurgence now, potentially, in nuclear. And, of course, not only overseas, as we see here in the UK now, but, of course, here domestically in the States as well. We know that both Trump and Vance, I believe, are pretty adamant about nuclear. And, of course, we know that we're going to start drilling again pretty soon. Probably over the next couple of months, in my eyes. Waiting for that better weather. Avoid high upfront cost. Okay. We're reading. There are currently 8 sites approved for nuclear development. Okay, nice. The new plan would encourage developers to put forward other possible sites and promises flexibility. Okay. Right. They get the data centers, need the power. With 4 bidders still in the race for what could be multi-billion-pound technology development contracts. Rolls Royce, Westinghouse, which of course is a nice older brand name company. However, they may side with Rolls Royce over Westinghouse. GE could potentially be an issue. It could go to GE. But I don't know, everyone seems pissed with America lately, so they'd probably keep it in-house and go with Rolls-Royce. So we will await further updates on that. Rolls-Royce is working on a recycling initiative aimed at turning old Royal Air Force Tornado fighter jet components into new parts for the Orpheus small engine concept. Orpheus. Not bad. Thursday, Tempest Project will convert jet components into powdered metal, which will then be used for 3D printing. There you go. The initiative, which marks the first of its kind, is in partnership with the UK Ministry of Defence and Additive Manufacturing Solutions. So, again, it's steps like this where I feel that, again, you know, Rolls-Royce coming out with this recycling initiative, as they said, and now we potentially have the bids for small reactors, which we know Rolls-Royce recently got into. It's a domestic company. They're trying to do the right thing, right? You understand? So in my opinion, they probably will get that bid, but of course we're speculating. But that's good, though, that they're able to... It's a good idea, actually, kind of grind them down and use it for 3D printing new components. Sounds good to me. I just hope, of course, you know, they're durable and whatnot. Joint ownership. Not raise competition. Okay. Faces limited impact from U.S. tariffs. Yes, we speculated about this as well. They're probably not going to be that exposed. However, again, 70% of the business with the U.S. in the defense division. But again, in my opinion, it's not an issue. I really don't think it's an issue. When we speak about a lot of the countries that quote unquote may have gotten over on us, you know, like Trump lays out with trade deals over the last several years or several decades, I don't know. I may be going out on a limb here, but I don't know if the UK necessarily is in the crosshairs as potentially some other countries out there. So that's why I really don't think this is an issue. Did we look at this last time, out of curiosity? When was the last update? Oh, no, last update was a while ago. Okay, I'm sorry. 8% of the company's deliveries of its WB engines go to the U.S., 7%, excuse me. City estimates U.S. exposure power systems unit to be in the 10 to 20% range. Although this area could be hit by tariffs, notice that this impact is unlikely to be material to the group since that area only represents 1/4 of the total group business. Yeah, again, I personally don't think it's going to be a big issue, but of course, only time will tell. Rolls-Royce's large submarine contract signed with the UK's Ministry of Defence will have a minimal impact on revenue. Contract worth £9 billion over 8 years is for the design, manufacture, and maintenance of nuclear reactors for the British submarine fleet. Notes the agreement significantly strengthens the London-listed and fuels its ambitions in the small modular reactor market. Yes. The deal also positions Rolls-Royce to capitalize on future opportunities in nuclear energy. That was back in January, roughly a month ago. Rolls-Royce. What's going on? Oh, they put it in dollars. I was like, why did one say 9 billion, the other saying 11 billion? Okay. So yeah, that's our conversion, by the way. So roughly 11 billion for that contract, again, spanning over the next 8 years. But as we said, this is what was going to happen. They were going to take the spotlight off of it. They wanted everyone to forget about it. Yeah, don't worry about Rolls-Royce. Piece of crap. They're going under. But again, just like I compared it to Ford here in the States, when we had the, I guess, financial crisis, if you will, several years back, and we bailed out Ford. And then, of course, every person I got on the phone was like, I'm doing great. My broker bought me Ford at $1. Like, everyone thought they were, freaking Gordon Gekko over here making that call. But again, it was technically us who bailed them out. But that's what I was speculating as well originally. You can go back and check those videos. I was saying, again, this is a very old company. It's almost, it's a necessity. It's a necessary business. Whether it's the engines or here now with the small reactors going into the submarines. We know it's a brand name business. It's been around for a while. They do pretty necessary operations. And that's why I speculated that even if, worst case scenario, the UK starts to seriously struggle, Rolls-Royce will probably be one of the few companies that are thrown a lifesaver, if you will. UK government building 4 new Dreadnought-class ballistic missile submarines over the next 15 to 20 years as part of its nuclear deterrence program. And this is also very good, again, because this adds to the backlog, right? And I used to mention many years ago where I would watch a company like Boeing, and even if they came in slightly light on earnings, the stock might still hold its value, or it would be up the next day. And I remember walking around the office like, what the hell's going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But then when you dig into the actual report, it was mentioned that even more contracts were signed, right? The backlog was continuing to grow, and, they had basically a steady revenue stream coming in, almost guaranteed, if you will, for, the next 7 upcoming years or whatever the heck it was, right? So that's how Wall Street and investors alike were looking at that situation. So that's why even something like this, Rolls-Royce, if they struggle, let's just say they come out with a good report next week, 6 months from now they come out with a light report. In my opinion, again, I wouldn't necessarily focus so much on the short-term numbers as I would more focus on those long-term contracts and that longer-term revenue going to start chunking in and dripping in over the next, 1, 3, 5 years. But of course, it depends how much you're up and if you need the money and, how long you want to hold it. That's entirely up to you. Contract awarded to Rolls-Royce Submarines will pave the way for the creation of more than 1,000 jobs in the UK, most of them in the company's manufacturing plant in Derby, England. Glasgow. Okay, quote, this long-term contract enables us to invest in the right skills, equipment, and facilities to play our part in protecting UK interests at home and overseas. The agreement, dubbed the Unity contract, also draws together current and upcoming work into one portfolio, and it's first of its kind awarded by the Ministry of Defence. This consolidation of contracts, is expected to allow Rolls-Royce to make about £400 million in savings thanks to improved efficiency and decision-making. Revenue coming in, costs being maintained or potentially saved. Analyst at Jefferies, quote, provides welcome visibility, and the extra jobs hint at some incremental revenues. However, this is difficult to quantify at this stage. Psst, scaredy cat. The move comes to the UK, awaits the findings of a review of its defense priorities. Okay, UK has pledged increased defense spending to 2.5% of the country's GDP, but the government has refused to provide a timeline until the review is concluded. US President Trump is piling pressure on NATO member states, such as Britain, to increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP. And we know Trump, we do have to give it to him. He is a pretty decent businessman, and the art of the deal does seem to work more times than not. And, uses leverage where he could. And remember, a lot of the public reacts emotionally, right? Not necessarily logically. So you hear a statement like that, or when Trump was coming out saying, other members should, pay their fair share, right? Like he was saying. And then, comes out with big tariffs when countries were, what was it? They were, I think it was Colombia, right? It was like refusing the flights coming back of the immigrants, and Trump's like, all right, 50% tariffs. And then, 30 minutes later, they were like, all right, send them in. So that's what I mean. It's, it's more of leverage. I know people like to fly off the handlebars and say, oh, look, see, he's pissing everyone off. No one likes him. No. It's true. I know it might be hard, again, as an average regular person to comprehend, but you do need to use that leverage sometimes when you're dealing with people, countries, militaries, to come to a compromise, right? To find that middle ground. But going off on a massive tangent, right? I have a feeling that if Trump kind of suggested something like this to some other NATO members, like Britain, as they say, instead of 2.5% of your GDP, you should bump it up to 4 or 5% of your GDP you should spend on defense. In my opinion, they more than likely will do it. And again, he's saying 5, even if they only bump it up to 3.5%, 4%, you and I both know what that means for companies like Rolls Royce, right? But again, if Trump is laying it out, I just have a feeling that this NATO member specifically, the UK, will probably start meeting that mark. Because they more than likely see the writing on the wall as well, especially, again, they're right over there, right? Isn't Greenland like kind of like a halfway point, if you will? So I have a feeling UK sees the writing on the wall, and they kind of comprehend a lot of the strategic moves and statements that Trump has been making. So something like that. Again, we're predicting, I'm speculating, right? I'm looking like 18 months down the road, so we don't know, anything can happen. But in my opinion, I do think this comes to fruition, which again should technically mean more contracts, more revenue, more job creation for Rolls Royce, right? UK Defense Secretary insisted the government remains committed to boosting defense spending. When asked on BBC Radio 4 whether the government was trying to reassure Trump of Britain's spending plans by announcing this contract just after his return to the White House. Quote, we will spend more on defense. Everybody agrees that we need to spend more on defense to meet the rising threat. Shares jumped up about 2% on that morning. Someone's